Sec. What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lassercast. We're being my good friend Danny Torkel over there discuss horror movies and streaming shows. Thanksgiving is just passed. We're heading towards Christmas time now, but we're going to give you a little early present. We're going to review the last episode of the Talamasca. Now, for a couple of weeks now, Danny and I have been talking about this show in sort of lackluster terms. We've been like, oh, yeah, it's okay. Is this going to connect to Interview with the Vampire? We've been doing that over and over and over again. Well, I think we're going to actually have some conflict here today. Danny, how do you stand on this show? Because I might have to argue with you now.
Well, I liked this last episode. I thought this last episode was fine. I liked the reveal of, and I guess we'll jump right into spoilers. So if you haven't watched the Talamasca, go on AMC Plus. Watch it. All 6 episodes are done now. I like the reveal of what the 752 is. I thought that the reveal of Doris as really being Helen's twin sister, who is revealed in an opening, like almost cold open scene, to have been turned into a vampire unknowingly. And we find out that that was all done because she has like this psychic ability that allows her to memorize mountains of information. So she is effectively turned into a library of Talamasca information,
Right.
and the Talamasca themselves turn her into a vampire so that she will live forever and be their living source of information, and that they burn the library down. All of that was really good, and I thought this was probably one of the better episodes of the season in terms of like just the quality of the 1 hour show. Uh, that being said, my biggest issue and the reason that I feel like I was sticking with this show was for me to see a point in this show, for me to understand why these 6 episodes mattered, was there needed to be a tie-in to Interview with the Vampire and the Vampire Lestat, which is coming out in about 6 weeks on
Ooh.
AMC.
Yeah.
It's Monday, as we're filming this, the next Monday on the calendar is December 1st. That show comes out in January. And you tell me if I'm wrong, but when this show ended, I did not see any link or direct connection to uh, the world that we've been introduced to in Interview with a Vampire, other than the word Talamasca, which showed up for a couple minutes in season 2 of Interview with the Vampire,
Right.
and a couple moments at the episode 1 of this show where you had Daniel Malloy there. I don't know if any of this was necessary. If we, and by we I mean the collective we fans of the Interview with the Vampire universe,
Right.
if we just ignored the Talamasca, these 6 episodes of television, would we be at any loss for the Vampire Lestat? I don't
Okay.
think. My answer to that question is I don't think so. And therefore, it was fine. I just don't see an overarching point to it. And I'm going to open the door to let my cat out of the room. So I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Danny makes his point and leaves, and then it's my turn to talk. I will
I'm
say
back.
this. Okay. Okay. Good. 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 I have an answer to your question too. I think that you're right. This show doesn't add anything to the interview with the vampire, right? However, I think that that might be a problem that we have as a culture at this moment, where it's like we want everything to be Marvel, and we want everything, and things turn into Marvel. Like they turned Star Wars into Marvel, right? Where it should just be its own thing, and there's maybe a trilogy. Doesn't have to be this expanded universe. This show Um, I got excited by the mechanics of the show right when it fucking ended. We're up to
Yeah.
episode 6. It felt like
Yeah.
it was a drag, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, this is actually kind of an interesting concept, and I don't need fucking Lestat or Louis or any of those characters to make what they show in episode 6 be interesting. But they absolutely 100% could have trimmed maybe an episode or two from this to get to the point that we got to with this last episode. What's intriguing about this last episode is you have an organization that tracks vampires, tracks witches, and they have a vast database of information on these creatures. And so they decide to create a vampire that's going to store this database. Like it's going to be the database.
Yeah.
To me, that's interesting. That could be like maybe a movie, just a movie by itself, right? And you really kind of could have told this whole season in a 2 hour and change movie. You know what I'm saying?
I
Like
agree
I
with you. I agree
yeah,
with you about the last episode where it just started to get good
yeah,
and then it ended. And I kind of feel like if this was an 8 episode series, this would have been like the turning point where, oh man, that was a great episode. And now we're going into the penultimate and then the final episode. And it's gonna rip roaringly lead into where the vampire Lestat is going. And
right,
and I like what you said about everything becomes Marvel because, and it's weird that my complaint about this show is that it doesn't connect enough. Where my
right,
complaint about Marvel is that they made everything connect so much that it became homework.
right.
And I don't want, as a viewer, I don't want the entertainment that I take in to feel like anything more than entertainment. Uh when it starts to feel like homework, the only time that's acceptable is when I'm covering it with you on this channel. If I'm
Yes,
not covering it with you on this channel, then I just feel like I'm absolutely wasting my time.
right.
Now, again, and this is maybe a personal thing for me, where this show differs from, like, let's say your standard Disney Plus Marvel show, is that, and again, I keep coming back to this. I was there at the main stage of Comic Con, New York Comic Con, in the second week of October, and the Talamasca had a main stage panel, and 30 minutes of it was dedicated to the Talamasca, and then 30 minutes of it was dedicated to the vampire Lestat.
Right.
And they had Daniel Malloy, Eric Bogosian was there. He stayed out on the stage for the full hour. One of like the um executive producers who does both shows, he was out there. I think his name's Mark Johnson. He was out there for the full hour because he EP'd this show and then Vampire Lestat, and he was one of the EPs on the first 2 seasons of Interview to Vampire. So I feel like I and the other people in that main stage panel were sold a bill of goods. We were sold a show that had a lot of connective tissue
Right.
to the characters in the universe that we loved from Interview with a Vampire. We've said this a million times. Of all the shows that we've covered in the 5+ years that The Last Cast has existed, with the exception of the Mike Flanagan Netflix shows, Interview with the Vampire is probably our favorite show that we cover. It's the show that far and away gets the biggest response from viewers. It's the show that got us the most comments. And I felt like sitting in that Comic-Con audience, recording the Q&A, which is up on our channel now, I felt like I was being told, you need to watch this show because you're
Right.
going to love it. And it is connected to those characters in that universe that you love. Plus, it will serve as a lead in to Vampire Lestat, which is coming out in early 2026. And I walked into Comic Con being like, the Talamasca? And I walked out of it like, hell yeah, can't fucking wait. Really excited for this and for Vampire Lestat.
Yes.
And 6 episodes and almost 6 hours later, I'm going, yeah, okay, that was something, but why? And
Okay.
I don't see almost any connective tissue other than there are vampires to the universe of, the immortal universe created by Anne Rice. And also we don't cover the Mayfair witches. I don't know if there was any connective tissue to that show. I'm going to guess probably not. And yeah, I even Googled John or James Cosmo, who plays Houseman, the old man at the end.
Sure, 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 sure.
He's been in everything from the original Highlander to Braveheart to Sons of Anarchy, Game of Thrones. He's one of those actors who, when you see him, you're like, oh, it's that guy.
Right.
And I started, and like I immediately went to IMDb, and I'm like, was he in Interview with a Vampire? Did I miss him in that show? Oh, maybe he's from Mayfair Witches. Nope, he's not on either of those shows. So I was like, oh, that's a cool character who I'd like to know more about, but he doesn't have connective tissue to those other shows. And
Right.
so, like, okay, I'm just kind of stuck in the middle.
All right. Well, why don't I play devil's advocate for a second? I want to play devil's advocate. Instead of looking at this show and thinking, well, where's the signs of Interview with the Vampire? What if what's set up on the show actually does play a part in the next season of Interview with the Vampire? See, I think to ponder this question, we have to go back to the wonderful late 90s, early 2000s to the Queen of the Damned movie, right? With Aaliyah and Jonathan Davies being the voice of Lestat when he's singing, right? A movie we covered on this channel. When you read the book, this isn't much of a
Yes.
spoiler because it's in the movie, right? You kind of learn of the origin of the vampires when you read the Queen of the Damned book, right? I'm thinking that because there's a shit ton of characters in the Queen of the Damned book. It's not just like Lestat and Armand and all those people. They're in it, but then there's even more characters, right? And there's like a Talamasca person. There's a woman that gets kind of roped in, and then she's kind of connected to the overall vampire mythology. You'll meet all these characters. Well, you kind of did in the shitty original Queen of the Damned, but you'll meet these characters like over the course of the Vampire Lestat show, and then hopefully we're going to get a Queen of the Damned show, right? And so I think that this character Doris, they might use her to be like Miss Exposition over the next 2 seasons of Interview with the Vampire. At least maybe the 4th season of Interview with the Vampire. I don't know if the book, The Vampire Lestat, is going to get stretched out into 2 seasons, the way that like Interview with the Vampire was stretched out into 2 seasons. But I kind of feel like it's not going to, because they covered some Vampire Lestat stuff already in Interview with the Vampire, right? Like the stuff with Armand and Lestat. So they might like actually take stuff from this show and weave it into the Vampire Lestat. And also, this one other thing, there's like 5 reveals in this fucking episode. This more shit happens in this episode than like the last 3 episodes of the show, right?
Yeah.
What do you call it? William Fichtner's character, Jasper, he gets captured by like the real Talamasca person. It's like, oh, we have our Talamasca person over here, and they're the shady group. But then if you pull back, there's even a bigger head of the Talamasca, right? He captures Jasper and then basically puts him in this kind of lab room, this hospital room, where there's just people on stretchers with their necks exposed, wanting William Fichtner to go ahead and make some vampire babies, right? There's a lot of vampires that attack Lestat in Queen of the Damned, and these could be people that they created. I think that like what we really should do, because we've definitely covered on these videos over and over again, like, hey, it's not like this, it should be like this. But we should talk about like the plot reveals and what is interesting, what's not interesting. Right? Like there's a simultaneous exposition dump, which I hate those, but this show needed it. We should talk about that like simultaneous exposition dump that's about Doris. Do you want to kind of go into that?
Well, I just wanted to use, you asked the question, like, what if the things that, while this show might feel kind of uh, pointless to an extent, given the Anne Rice immortal universe, what if like these characters show up? What if Jasper shows up in Queen of the Vampire Lestat? What if Doris shows up in Vampire Lestat? I think that would be fine, and maybe it would retroactively, you know, make some people go back and want to like rewatch the Talamasca. But I also think that they are not going to just stick a William Fichtner in Vampire Lestat without doing 30 seconds of here's who this guy is. And I think that when they do that, it renders the whole, oh, but isn't it going to be cool to see those characters kind of moot? Because it's like, if you have to re explain who your characters are because nobody watched this other show, or so many people watched it and just tuned it out or forgot about it, or like we admitted that we've done at points during this season, watched it like this on in the background with our phones scrolling by because it's like, you know, it, I think that, it's going to kind of render, like, do you care about, do you, well, I'm just yes or no question. Do you care about ever finding out anything more about Guy's mother?
No, no.
No. That was the plot point that got him into the Talamasca in episode 1.
Right.
And the season ends, and Doris like says something to him on the boat of like, you want to know about your mother? And I'm like, at this point, I don't care.
Right.
And
Right.
like they leave that off as like, so now there's going to be a season of Interview with the Vampire, Vampire Lestat, and then somewhere down the line, maybe towards Halloween next year, there's going to be a season of Talamasca season 2, where suddenly we're going to pick back up, and they expect you and me to be like, oh, I can't wait to find out about Guy's mother, and we're going to be like, literally, we're gonna go, oh, we probably have to watch a YouTube video that recaps the Talamasca, and we'll probably go to our own video to watch, to like, and then we'll be like, oh, that's right, we didn't care.
Right. No,
So
I agree. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, so it's just like, there, yes, I would love to see Jasper again. I'd love to find out more about this Houseman guy. Even now that we know the truth, I'd love to know more about Helen and Doris. Maybe even these cops, these
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like the investigators from the UK. But like the main character of this show, I just feel like, oh, I don't care about him anymore. To me, his story's over, and he can go away. Like, and I never need
Yeah.
to see that character again.
Okay. I 100% agree with everything you just said. I totally did. There's one thing though that you've said a bunch in our videos when we cover the show. You've said, I don't really care about the Talamasca, or like the Talamasca itself is not that interesting, or what's the point of the Talamasca? And I think that this episode finally did something about that. I think that like the idea of the Talamasca, and I've said this before, is kind of like a boring concept. You don't want to watch a show about people that are just watching people. You're just like 2 steps removed from the actual interesting stuff, then, right? So, but that's what the Talamasca is in the Anne Rice books. This show implies that there's sort of like infighting and espionage among the Talamasca people, and that vampires are roped into that. And I think that even though like the idea of the Talamasca itself is not exciting, but the idea of these like secret holders kind of fighting against each other, that is a lot more compelling than what it could have been.
Also,
Like
the idea that they're supposed to be watching like the vampires and the witches and the, I don't know, whatever else. And they are obviously employing vampires and helping to create vampires. So
Right.
there's like, you know, it feels like you're watching like a government show where you find out like, the CIA is facilitating terrorist operations, where it's like,
Yeah.
it's like your own the thing that your group is supposed to do and like watch out for and prevent, they're actually causing and playing a role in. So yeah, again, there is that like intrigue stuff throughout this show. And there's, you know, between Olive, who was like a double agent, um, Jasper, who felt like he was a rogue agent, but then ends up being captured by the Talamasca to make vampires. Um, and like to your point about like, I did see the Queen of the Damned movie, and it's like there's all those vampires that are out to get Lestat. Um, could that be in the show? Could it be like the Talamasca is out to stop Lestat because he went so public with his vampire-ness?
Oh.
You
Oh,
know,
Dan, you just gave me a storytelling boner, man. I did not even fucking think of that. Right, because okay, here's one thing. I know you got more of a point to make, but I want to just add to that point. I think we said this in our last recording, but when Helen goes into this bar in a hotel last episode, they're playing one of Lestat's songs. And so it's like, okay, well, this is the time. We're in this time right here where Lestat is becoming popular and stuff. So creating a vampire army to go against Lestat, that is already, yeah. Ooh. Danny, dude, you're talking about how important the show is, and you literally just revealed how it could be tied in. You made the connective tissue, you know?
yeah, I did it in 22 minutes. I didn't need 6 episodes.
Oh man, good dude, spot on. That's probably what it is, though. You probably just fucking figured it out. That's probably what it is, man.
that
You know what
did
I'm saying?
feel that did feel like what was happening, because I remember in Queen of the Damned how like the whole point was they vampires around the world are upset at Daniel Malloy for writing that book, Interview with a Vampire, which is in this series. It's literally first episode. He's signing copies of the book. And so they're mad at Louis for giving up all that information about vampires to be made public. And then on top of that, they're more angry at Lestat for basically just waking up and being like, "Yeah, I'm
I'll
not
shut
going to
this.
hide. I'm just going to come out and say I'm a vampire, and then I'm going to become the biggest rock star in the world, and everybody's going to come see the vampire, the rock star." And there's a scene in Queen of the Damned where he's playing a concert and vampires are going through the crowd on their way to the stage to kill him, and it like
Right,
sets up like the final climax of the movie.
right. No, I mean, like, it makes sense because one of the things I was going to say, Danny, before you just blew my fucking mind, is I kind of wish there was a scene where the Talamasca said, our purpose is this, that if we don't do our job, then this is going to happen, right? Oh, if we don't keep vampires in check, they're going to take over the world. Like the thing that you expect normally from this kind of stuff. And for them to like recruit vampires to
Oh,
take down Lestat, it adds so much more complexity to it
oh.
because it's like Lestat is old, he's super fucking powerful, so maybe they're just making like cannon fodder to throw against it. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe in their ranks they don't have like super high up vampires. Like when I say high up, I mean like vampires that are old and powerful, right?
Well,
So
Doris has a line in this episode where she's like, "I'm weak. She's like, I'm a
Right.
vampire, but I'm weak. I can't stop time. I can't read your mind. I can't do I don't have any of these powers.
Right.
She's just a vampire. And like the one time you see her use her powers in the flashback is when you find out she's the one that killed that guy Archie because she was mad about Kevis being killed.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Right. And, yeah. And I kind of want to talk about Doris in more detail and the fact that she like kind of like raised Kevis. I want to talk about
mhm.
that too. But that part is really interesting. Like the whole idea of like certain vampires are stronger because they're older. Like Armand is super strong, right?
Yeah.
Lasat is super strong. But then there's some like I like the idea of we want to keep vampires under wraps because it keeps the world in a certain way. We don't want to let vampires get too powerful. I like that idea. I'm hoping that they have this in mind when they're making this show. And one other thing I want to point out too is in that scene you're talking about where we find out Doris is a vampire. She says, "I can't stop time," which you literally just quoted, right? And I was like, can they fucking stop time? I've read these books. I don't remember them stopping time. And
Well, I
so,
think like what we saw Jason Schwartzman do at the beginning of in episode 1, where he can like pause everything that's going on, or
right,
like maybe it's slowed down so much, almost the way that speaking of Marvel, maybe it's like the way that like we see Quicksilver running in the X-Men movies, where
right.
time doesn't stop. He's just moving so fast that everything around is going so slowly. Um, and that's a power that the vampires have.
Yes, and Danny, man, you were just like fucking the yin to my yang today because like I went on some Reddit threads and stuff, and they were talking about how like they don't freeze time in the books. It is like you just said, like Quicksilver, where they're moving really fast. But then I was like, wait a minute, there's a scene when Jasper pours a drink, or no, the British guy pours a drink. Jasper freezes him and the drink, and then like takes the drink and drinks it, and that seems like stopping time, just like Doris literally says stopping time. However, you could kind of write it off like William Fichtner is talking to Guy in his mind, and our thoughts are instantaneous. So it's not like he's like a fucking X-Man where he's like literally freezing time. It's
Yeah.
like he's just moving really fast and then communicating really fast. I don't know. I'm gonna give him a pass on that. Um, but we should real quick before we wrap this up, like we should just talk about like Doris because I feel like Doris really comes through in this episode and makes the show a lot more interesting. Just the character of Doris. What do you think?
Hmm. Yeah. I really like I said at the very beginning, I loved the reveals. I thought like we joked last week about like Doris laying in bed with Guy and like what the hell, like there's like some weird anti-sexual chemistry between them.
Right.
And then we find out that like she's, all the reveals of she's the twin sister, B, she's a vampire, like even like the little thing about like her taking the lenses out of her eyes so that like you could see her vampire eyes. uh I liked all of that. The reveal of her being the 752 was really cool. um and again, it's one of those things where, you know, the cool stuff happens right as the show comes to an end.
Right.
And we don't know if these characters are in the Vampire Lestat. So we don't know if we're going to see this character again in 6 weeks or in 10, 11 months or never again. We don't know. And it's like we spent the whole season. Like, I would hope, based on this season, with the importance of the 752 and the fact that it was like the main plot point of this whole season, that that comes around again uh in the Vampire Lestat, and that, Doris plays a role in that show. Um, I don't know. If we're theorizing that the Talamasca is creating vampires to go after Lestat. We have no idea if that's true. We're just theorizing. What
Right.
if Doris is one of the vampires who goes to help Lestat?
Right.
And she is all of the information about the Talamasca. So
Right.
him and potentially, not potentially, we know she's going to be in it, Akasha, um, you know, probably will need some inside info about the Talamasca. So having the 752 on their side would make sense. And listen, if that is all the case, if all of this theorizing comes true, I will retroactively take back a lot of the not even nasty things I've said, because I've my stance on this show for the 4 episodes that we've reviewed has been basically it's fine but inconsequential. That's like my 4-word review of the Talamasca, the Secret Order as a show. It's
Yeah.
fine but inconsequential.
Yeah.
If the stuff we are theorizing, even some of it comes to fruition in the Vampire Lestat, I will remove the word inconsequential, and I'll probably say it was fine and slightly necessary.
All right, I'm gonna add my review. I'm gonna try to keep it like 4 words too. Um, totally focused on plot, barely any character. I don't know how many words it is, but that's what this is. Like, because the introduction of Doris's role and what Doris is the big reveal. It's the money shot they saved for the last episode. And so you can't have it until the last episode. Story's over, here's the reveal, right? So you have all these episodes where we're just trying to get to that. And that can be acceptable on a show where you're like trying to get to this reveal at the very end. But the only way that works is if you have characters that are interesting and you don't care what's happening, you just want to spend more time with them.
Yeah.
Like Doris herself makes everything else more interesting once you find out what she is. Because one of the things that was a main part of the story in this episode was that Helen starts getting blamed for murders and things like that because her DNA is at the crime scene. She's at Tevis's murder scene. Her DNA is all over the place. Well, her DNA is all over the place because she's twins with Doris and they have the same DNA. That's interesting. That's like exciting. That's a twist. It's interesting. I don't give a fuck about Helen. She gets arrested by the cops. I'm like, who cares? Goodbye. You like served your purpose for the plot. And that's what this all comes down to, is just the plot. Like William Fichtner as a person is charismatic, and so Jasper is more interesting automatically. But holy shit, Guy, boring as shit. Helen, boring as shit. The 2 main characters of the show. You know, I will give them credit. I don't want to be totally mean. It was kind of cool that like Guy was able to use his like sort of lawyer background to get out of the like to not be intimidated by the cop. That was good at the end of this episode. But otherwise, you said it right on the you hit the nail on the head, man. It's like I don't care about him and his mom at all. You know?
No.
So
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it off. Hopefully, when we start covering Vampire Lestat, which will probably be one of our first shows of 2026 to cover, it will, there'll be some. It's got to be better than this because we know those characters, we know the universe, we know the source material, and I this show has not quelled my excitement for the Vampire Lestat. In fact, I think our conversation today weirdly made me more excited just thinking about what potentially could happen, even if none of that actually happens.
right. Fantasy booking. That's a big thing on Comic Books Transformed and the Lasercast. Speaking of the Lasercast, Mr. Torkel, you want to talk about what else is on our channel?
We are also covering It, Welcome to Derry. We will be reviewing episode 5 of that show right after we sign out of this. So that'll be up on the channel very soon. We I have an incredibly busy week. Um, Tuesday, I'm going to see A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 at the theater, and there's going to be a Q&A with my friend Lowell, who wrote a book about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise that I have. So I'm going to try to take some video there of the Q&A, promote his book a little bit, and probably do a book review of that later this month. Uh, and then Wednesday night, I'm going to a different Nighthawk to see Castle Freak.
Oh,
That is being put on by two of my other friends from trivia. My friend Jared, who does the Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks podcast about everything Charles Band, and my friend John Tarani. They are doing that, and they're the screenwriter of Castle Freak, Dennis Paoli, who also did Reanimator and From Beyond. He's going to be there for a Q&A, so you can expect a video of that uh, later this week. And then at the end of the week, the New York City Horror Film Festival is starting. I'm going to try to go at least 2 nights of that, probably Thursday night and Saturday, to see a couple movies. So yeah, expect some reviews of that. Oh, and I don't know if you've heard of this show, Stranger Things. Apparently, it's a big deal. Season 5, the final season, the first part just came on. I am assuming that you have already watched all 4 episodes.
that is correct.
Now, did you watch them with Pepper?
Not yet. No.
No, okay. Because Wednesday night, I with the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, I go out every year. For the last 27 years, I've had this tradition with my friends. We go out every Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We see a movie. We actually have turkey dinners. And Charlotte was just like, "Yeah, I don't got time for you," and she watched all 4 episodes. Athena caught up with her. So everyone in my family, my sister, my wife, my daughter, have all watched them, and I'm lagging behind. But I will get those done before I go back to work on Monday, and we will cover them probably sometime during the work week.
Exactly. Exactly. Good job summarizing that all, my man. You guys, if you enjoyed me and Danny talking here, please make sure you subscribe to the Lastercast and you give this video a like. You know, it's rough. Danny and I covered the movie Keeper. We've covered the Talamasca just now. There's all this talk of, well, we kind of disagree on a few things, and then there's talk of reverse sexual tension in these shows and movies. Well, now though, we're going to switch gears completely. We're heading over to talk about It, Welcome to Derry, where we can show our boners for our Lovecraftian horror clown. So make sure you guys join us. And